It's been a wild 15 years in the smartphone market. We've seen some manufacturers come up, we've seen some come down, despite having some crazy original ideas. Through all of these years, Samsung has persevered through a combination of some very clever ideas and borrowing some ideas from Apple, you might say. Okay, pitchforks down, let's have a discussion. It's absolutely normal. Everybody's going to copy a successful and well-known feature from others because the users demand it and expect it. Over the years, we've seen fans from one camp go, Samsung is copying this, and then the other fans go, Apple is copying that, and everyone is at their throats. Let's chill. Of course, people will take someone else's work, interpret it, and make it into something else. Did you know what the first prototype of a typewriter was? It was cobbled together with piano keys and a hammer and some ink. Because the inventors had a thought, oh, we want to be able to press a button and have a hammer put ink on paper. Kind of like a piano but for words. But as we were reviewing the new Galaxy S23 series, it kind of dawned on me that Samsung is at its best when it's not trying to simulate something that Apple has done. In fact, the Galaxy shines when you look at the things that are strictly Samsung about it. By the way, there's one thing that Apple still has over Android phones, and that's MagSafe, the ring of magnets on the back of an iPhone that allows it to stick to chargers, wallets, stands, even power banks. Well, thanks to today's sponsor, you can get something like this on your Galaxy S23 too. Check out Mous. They have a wide range of cases for Galaxy's Pixels and iPhones in all these cool styles, clear or gradient, armored fiber or wood, as well as a leather or fabric finish. All of them have this integrated magnetic ring which will allow your phone to stick to any MagSafe compatible accessory even if it's not an iPhone. So you can still use those cool wallets, stands, chargers and mounts. Of course, Mous also makes such accessories, and while we are on the topic of mounts, check out their intra-lock ecosystem. It uses a mechanism that physically latches your mouse evolution case to their mounts, and it will keep your phone secure on your bike, motorbike, golf caddy and so much more. The evolution cases have been designed for extreme protection and they are still compatible with MagSafe accessories. So whether you want a mechanical latch or a simple MagSafe compatible connection, you can do so without changing the mouse case at all. Check out the link below for the full range of mouse products. Thanks to Mous for sponsoring this video. Let's move on. Consider this, we always say, Apple introduced this feature but it did it the Apple way. Like the always-on display, which the iPhone 14 Pro has. Apple took years to implement it, and when it did, it shows you more information than Android phones, and even shows you your wallpaper. Every review for the iPhone 14 Pro you go through will say, we finally get always-on display the Apple way. But why doesn't anyone talk about the Samsung way? Samsung was the manufacturer that believed in large screen phones and made the Note series when everyone else was poking fun at how ridiculously big these look. Nobody wants a big phone, and Samsung had the crazy idea to put a Wacom digitizer under the screens of their phones, making their S Pen experience absolutely amazing. Nobody wants a stylus. In 2023, we may take these things for granted, but look at the S23 Ultra and you will see the embodiment of the Samsung way. Those curves at the edge of the screen, those used to be reserved to the Edge models. It all started with the Galaxy Note Edge way back in 2014, and that was an absolute shocker of a device. No concrete leaks managed to spoil this reveal. We were all expecting the vanilla Galaxy Note 4, and then the Edge dropped. Ultimately, few users found the edges to be practical, so over the years, Samsung condensed the curve to be this small arc at the end of the screen. It still adds to the look of the device and it makes swipe gestures easier, but also we still have the edge panels, the little drawers with shortcuts that you pull in from the side of the display. Those were started on the original Galaxy Note Edge, and now you can find them on multiple Android phones. The ginormous 6.8-inch AMOLED display on the front looks stunning, because Samsung has been working on its OLED tech for more than a decade now. It can still do these very aggressive and punchy colors, but I like setting it to neutral for a smooth viewing experience. Funnily enough, Most of Apple's OLED screen panels are made by Samsung displays, though an iPhone has its colors preset out of the box and you can't really touch them. Samsung software has always been about giving you some extra choices. It hasn't always been smooth sailing, mind you. Back in TouchWiz days, which was like 2016, we used to joke that maintaining your Galaxy phone was sort of a part-time job. But that was a step in the evolution. Now, the software on the Galaxy S23 is called One UI 5.1. It underwent a change where Samsung shaved off a lot of system elements and confusing parts and then gradually started including them again. Now, when you pick up a Samsung Galaxy phone, you do get lots and lots of options. For gestures, for custom looks, for interfacing with the Bluetooth devices that are connected to the phone, and so on and so forth. However, whenever I pick a fresh Galaxy phone, I feel like I'm being gradually introduced to them instead of being hit with a brick wall. As you set up your new Galaxy S23 and start using it, the phone will eventually give you prompts and recommendations on what you can do with it. A huge part of One UI's identity is the baked-in multitasking suite. You have the S23 Plus or the S23 Ultra with their huge displays, why not putting that screen instead to work? Any app can be made into a floating window, or it can be pushed off to one half of the screen to make room for a second app, and it works in a seamless, floaty manner. You can even save your favorite app pairs for split screen to a dedicated icon and launch them together whenever you wish to do so. Samsung has been working on multitasking features since 2014. Back then the hardware could not handle it. Things were choppy, things were heating up, batteries were draining. Needless to say, some people were making fun of it. Nobody wants a big screen, nobody wants two apps at the same time. But there you have it, that's the Samsung way, just pushing to get something done and asking the question if we should do it later. Another result of that push is the Samsung DeX, a software extension which kicks in when you hook up your Galaxy phone to an external display or an old laptop. It uses the phone's processor for power and then gives you a full desktop environment to work in. Granted, it is an Android desktop environment, so it has some limitations. But I recently spent 2 weeks working on DeX, doing my regular PhoneArena work, and I found that it's doable with some workarounds. It used to be bad 6 years ago, now it's doable. I, like many others, am very keen on the idea of being able to handle all of my digital affairs with just the one device, so I'll be coming back to DeX to check it out again. And nobody else has successfully tried to do this. The closest we have is Apple's M1 iPads, which recently got the new Stage Manager feature, which also gives you a desktop environment on an external monitor. Now, the S Pen is the contentious point. Many say that it's a needless gimmick that takes up space for a battery, when you can type on a digital keyboard and just transfer your text into the digital world much easier. I dare argue that there is a subset of creatives that will still enjoy and use the S Pen on the regular, those that like to draw for sure. Even if it's a limited canvas, you can still start a sketch on the S23 Ultra. But also, through my years on Galaxy Note devices, I've found that I still like to take handwritten notes. You can draw circles around important words, arrows and highlights to emphasize ideas. You can only jot down a few words with a few symbols to remind you of the exact thought you had in that moment. And since it's all available on that phone that's always in your pocket, it's extremely easy to put thought to paper, display. I've written down ideas for articles, for videos, song lyrics, and I would be extremely sad to see the S Pen gone. Thankfully, it seems the company is staying firmly behind the decision of keeping the S Pen on, since there are enough fans of the stylus out there that are of the same mind as me. That is another staple of Samsung phones. Few other manufacturers have tried and incorporated styluses successfully with their phones. Styluses? Styly? You get it. Even the Apple Pencil, which is great by the way, is a separate purchase for a tablet. What about the camera module then? Well, believe it or not, this is actually a field where Samsung has been a follower for many years. It was Apple that first introduced the telephoto lens for portrait photography, and it was LG that first came up with ultra-wide lenses on phones. Ironically enough, LG was way ahead of the curve, because it was years later that people began thinking, hey, I prefer an ultra-wide lens instead of a telephoto. But hey, ultimately Samsung did with its cameras what Samsung does best. It went absolutely bonkers, pushing features and specs over and over. Mind you, not all of them were great. The company isn't shy to release something that's experimental. The Galaxy S20 Ultra was the first Samsung with 100x zoom, and it wasn't great, and something was wrong with the camera's focus. Thankfully, that's all fixed now. This is a quad camera system, one 200 megapixel main camera, 12 megapixels ultra-wide camera, 10 megapixel 3x zoom camera, and another 10 megapixel 10x zoom camera. Yes, this phone takes awesome pictures, it takes awesome portraits, and yes, it has 100x zoom. You're looking at some samples right now. Now, if you want a great phone camera, you might be tricked to think that this is the only choice to make and that the Galaxy S23 or 23 Plus are inferior. While it is true that they only have 50 megapixel main cameras and they don't have a dedicated fourth camera for extra zoom, they still take fantastic photos. So don't worry if an Ultra is out of your budget. Apple pulled punches with the non-pro iPhone 14 line and gave them the same old 12 megapixel sensors, which produce jagged, over-sharpened photos that look dated in 2023. You can say Samsung also gave the S23 the old sensor from the S22. Difference being is that Samsung has been pushing its specs hard for years, so the S22 sensor is still very good. But it's not all sunshine and roses. As previously mentioned, Samsung does take some cues from Apple, right? The ever-present elephant in the room is the missing headphone jack, and yes, I will keep ragging on about that. We know why it's missing on the more expensive phones, but you can find it on mid-rangers and budget devices. Come on, we know why. Also, the small S23 has a quirk that you need to consider. If you buy a Galaxy S23 with the base 128GB storage, you get a slower storage chip, that's UFS 3.1. The 256GB version and all other Galaxy S23 phones get UFS 4.0, which is 2 times faster. Now, this has not been confirmed at the time of recording this pre-release, but all signs do point towards it. Apparently, Samsung doesn't even make UFS 4 chips that have less capacity than 256GB. You may say that's a move straight out of Apple's book, but it's not that bad, let me explain. For one, even at MSRP, buying a 256GB Galaxy S23 is only $60 more than the 128 version. And considering you get double the storage with double the speed, I'd say it's worth it. Secondly, that's just MSRP. Like during the pre-order or even the sale period, Samsung is either handing out free storage upgrades or discounts which give you the opportunity to invest in a bigger storage phone. So in my opinion, the base Galaxy S23 with just the 128 gigs exists only so Samsung could say, hey, these phones start at $799. In reality, you should do your best, if you're going for the small one, to get a 256 version, but fear not, Samsung will be giving away storage upgrades. Just keep an eye out. Get an S23 Plus if you want big screen, solid performance and good camera. And if you want all of the signature Samsung features, like a curved screen, an S Pen, a camera that goes above and beyond with features, then the S23 Ultra is the one. That's it, peace be upon you, subscribe and stuff, and I'll see you next time. Bye!